main focus. It's not by choice either, because somehow poetry has become what I'm known for, and that's all well and good. But singing is always a part of my life, and I wanted to incorporate that aspect of my human experience into my poetry in whatever way possible, because I wanted to make up for the fact that it's no longer the focus, right? So I wanted to include singing in every poem that I could, and not just singing, but the musicality of, opera, the musicality of a melodic phrase. I wanted it to be reflected in my poems. So hence why I talk about singing here, because for me poetry is like song. Poetry is like Liebe, it's like a way of expression that is, I think, also more importantly, is intangible. There's something about music that you cannot put a formula to, which is why sometimes it's so hard to teach music to people, because you cannot tell someone that this song is better than this song, and these are the reasons: A, B, C, conclusion. Hence, this song is better than this song. You cannot do that to human beings, right? There's something about music which I love, is that, especially in the context of Singapore, in which it is all about explanations, it is all about formulae, it is all about breaking it down into A, B, C, D, E, right? So I wanted to incorporate that in my poetry. I've always argued that, this goes against a lot of academic discussions about, poetry, but poetry is like that too, I believe. It's like walking past a painting. When you see a painting, or when you listen to a song, there's something ineffable about the experience that I still feel shouldn't be put into words. If you put into words, that's well and good, but you must also take into account that there's this one aspect of the experience that just cannot be put into words. When you like something, you just like it. When you are touched by it, you just touch it. You just don't know why. The words come later. Oh, you can say it's a spiritual experience. You can say it's an existential experience. You can use words and all that. But in the beginning, when you are experiencing something, there is this one moment you go like, it's what the romantic poets call the sublime. It's the sublime because you cannot talk about it. That's the paradox about the sublime. The sublime is just a word for it. But what it really refers to, what it signifies, is the ineffable. So this is what I wanted to capture here as well. Hence the references to music, to singing, to my own experiences as an opera singer. So here I wanted to talk about, I wanted to change the word song to melody, also because I repeated the word song twice, I think in the draft one. And I wanted to, I don't like repetitions like that. When you repeat a word in a poem, for me that's very crucial. When you repeat a word, something has to change. Something in the tonality, something in the interpretation of the word, in the way the word has been contextualized in the poem. Something has to shift. The shift can be, under the table. It's not obvious, but there must be a shift. A kind of undercurrent that just goes under the surface, and you go like, you trip a little bit in the way you read the poem. And I wanted that kind of fluidity in the way things modify themselves in the poem. So in the second draft, I changed song to melody. And song, mouths, I wanted to use mouth because of the tactility. There's something very erotic about the mouth. I wanted all that as an introduction to all the themes that would surface in the book. All the poems in the book here, there are poems about people have loved, about my mother and all that, about a huge part of this book is also about my mum. Well, essentially talking rubbish. It's a huge part here, and I wanted to capture that. So mouth to sing, mouth to articulate nonsense, to impose logic where logic is impossible. All these things were all part of the poems in the book. And I wanted all these themes to be introduced already in this one introductory poem. And I wanted it to be ironic as well, hence the title End Song. Because it's not the end, it's the beginning. So the beginning is the end is the beginning. The paradox, I wanted it to be introduced from the very start. It's a poem about death, and the theme of death is something I get very caught up in caught up in throughout the entire book. And how I resolve it is, is in the last poem called Landing, which I will read after this. But let me just read End Song again, and then I'll read the last poem to kind of tell you, or to kind of explain to you how I kind of come to terms with what I've spoken about so far. So, End Song. Also, if you notice, I never changed the last line because I felt like, after a while, after all the edits, the last line was for me the purest line because the line just came out of my brain like that. It just sunk the last line. Okay, I cannot change this line. It's the purest experience. This one line is the purest experience. It's as if the line came from somewhere behind me and just went out like that. It's like I had to include this one line. So, End Song. So I'm finally dead. I sang a song once as a child, then awoke an adult to sing the same song, although with an irony this time that was beautiful but sad, beautiful and sad. I hope to sing again after my coffin closes like a mouth, the melody uncoiling out from my afterlife, then entering the present like an echo, the ghost of an aria in the living air. So that's just an opening taster of all the poems that will follow. And I guess I'll just close with the last poem. The last poem is called Landing. It's written on an airplane. I write a lot of poems on airplanes, I don't know why, because of all my travels. Landing. What death may be, a slow, close to weightless tilt, like a burgeoning fetus turning slightly in the womb. The engine starts a low growl like a stomach, the aircraft hungry to land, to devour the space between its falling body and the ground, followed by the slow lick of its wheels against the runway's belly, pressing down, then skating forward, only to decelerate, a sensual slow-mo, and the plane makes a sound like the hugest sigh of relief. The seatbelt sign blinks off for the final time. We rise up from our seats like souls from bodies, leaving bulky hand luggage in the overhead compartments. Then begin a tense line down the aisle, awkwardly smiling at each other, remaining few minutes alive with all kinds of ambivalences, or simply relief at having arrived at long last in that no time zone of a country without a name except the ones we give it, weeping, laughing, or both at once. So that's the last poem. Of course, a lot happens in between. So I mean, one thing I need, one caveat I need to insert here is that it's important to read. I know it sounds weird coming from me. It should be coming from someone else, but it's important to read everything else in between to understand the journey from the opening poem to the last poem. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's my ramble about this one small poem. Does anyone have any questions?
I was going to give a round of applause.
Thank you.
To use an intellectual phrase, I was going to say that was gold, I thought, really, to speak about the genesis of the poem and more generally about the context. But yes, did anyone have any questions they'd like to ask or any observations?